Hi everyone, how are you? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I know this group is the Caribbean Resiliency Group, and we were here together in June for the E-Summit, and we're working on that, so that's going to come back again next year. But in the meantime, just to connect with everyone, I know a lot's been happening around the world, and this month is October, and this is also a lot's going on here in the U.S. Breast Cancer Month, domestic violence, mental health, all these themes. And I was checking in with the speakers, and I was having a great conversation with Jolene Anderson, who is here with us, and also there's a few guests who are here on the Zoom meeting, and I put the link in the group. So if you want to pop in to have a more close contact, you absolutely can. Um, I was popping in and said, "Hi, Jolene, what's going on?" And we were touching base. And I noticed on her feed, she had posted a picture of her with no hair. And I said, "Well, what's going on? What's the story behind that?" And then she proceeded to tell me that she had dealt with breast cancer. And I said, "Oh, wow. I had no idea because I thought Jolene is, she's beautiful. She's young. And I'm thinking breast cancer is mainly for those who are in their 40s, 50s and above." And so I said, there has to be a story here. And I said, "Hey, Jolene, do you want to come in back into the group and share?" And she said yes. And so here we are today. So architect Jolene Anderson. And so she is talented. She's from the Caribbean. I'm going to have her tell a little bit more about herself. But she's currently living in New Zealand. And, she is with her family. She built a custom home in New Zealand that's gorgeous. I'm going to post a picture in the group for you to see some of the work that she's done. And I'm going to just allow Jolene to say hello to everyone before we get into the presentation.
Hi, everybody. We just want to thank you for joining. As Marsha would have explained, I am currently living in New Zealand. Grew up in Jamaica, born and bred, left there after I completed my first degree and moved to Barbados, where I spent most of my career, shifted in and out of Canada and Trinidad as well, but most of my architectural career was spent working in Barbados. I moved to New Zealand a little over 5 years ago, work related. I applied for a job with the council here, and the rest is history.
So yeah, and there's a lot more than what she has. She's just given us a very short version. So guys, let's talk about the issue at hand. We're going to have a small presentation, then we're going to get back to Jolene, and she's going to give us a little bit more of her story. And this is a quick presentation on some of the stats about breast cancer. One of the reasons for us even having this discussion is that we're professionals, and as architects and designers, we adhere to a certain level of productivity and work ethic. And when life situations start happening to affect that, how do you navigate that? How do you move forward? These are situations where people don't always survive, where people don't, sometimes they don't recover. And now I don't see much discussion within our profession on some of these topics and some of these issues. So I'm really thankful for Jolene to come on and to share. Also, it's also to have another contact. God forbid any of us should have to deal with these situations, but if anything like that happens, it's always good to know, that there are people who might have gone through something like this, somebody that you can call. And I'm going to provide some more information. A lot of the information that I have is from the U.S., but I do know that there are respective um, cancer societies throughout the world, from wherever you are, from in the Caribbean. I know Jolene said she, had to deal with the one in New Zealand. So this is not an issue that is located to one area. This is a worldwide issue. And so I'm going to start the presentation. So let me make certain that I'm looking. Okay. So as we said, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And these are just some of the statistics about breast cancer. Now, breast cancer is predominantly a it's predominantly something that most women go through, but it is not limited to women. Men do also have breast cancer, and I know Jolene she was telling me a story about that. So men do also have breast cancer. Now, in the African American community, it tends to be a higher occurrence. Also, if you have a family member who has had breast cancer, you're twice likely to have a diagnosis of breast cancer. Once you get into, these are some of the statistics across the different ethnicities, and generally, even though generally white women tend to have a higher incident, for blacks or African Americans, there tends to be a higher death rate. So in the U.S., and again, the statistics is mainly for the U.S., but I know that it's also prevalent throughout the world. 1 in 8 women tend to get diagnosed as with breast cancer. 15% of those breast cancer cases are related to alcohol. Um, they're under this was the statistics that really got me because I didn't know this one. And when Jolene started talking to me about it, I said, what? So we're focused on the African American community because even though the recommended age for you to start having a mammogram is it is at 45 and above, African American women tend to have it younger. And there is a particular gene. Jolene's going to talk a little bit more about that, but this is what I wanted us to highlight. And I kind of put this information together after doing some research because I realized I didn't know as much about it. So, and we have a video at the end and they're going to go into a little bit more. So African American women tend to have a more aggressive breast cancer at younger ages. They tend to have a lower survival rate compared to their white counterparts. And they tend to have a highest death rates due to a late diagnosis. 96% of the women tend to be cancer-free after 5 years if found and treated early. So we've heard a lot of the advertisements that says get treated, get tested early because you have a higher survival rate once you have an early diagnosis. And this is the other thing that, and I know Johnny's going to talk a little bit about this, is that breast cancer is the most common cancer in pregnant and postpartum women, especially between the ages of 32 to 38. So we're going to conclude, and this is a video from the CDC, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to Jolene.
I think the best thing to do when you start thinking about whether or not you're at high risk is start talking to your family. Have we had any male breast cancer in the family? Have any women been diagnosed with breast cancer before the age of 45? How many? Those kinds of things young women need to be aware of because they do increase her risk for getting early breast cancer. That part can be challenging because there are some families that don't talk about sickness. They certainly don't talk about cancer or, like my family, it's not a conversation that we generally like to have. The first step that I would suggest is, finding that family member. There's always one who's the one with information, the one who kind of likes to talk and kind of start there.
So I'm going to turn the floor over to Jolene. Jolene, again, I said is an architect. She is presently living in New Zealand. And we were just, having a catch up. And I found out that she went through a period where she dealt with breast cancer. So Jolene, tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. Well, I was diagnosed in 2016, July of 2016. And How that came about is a bit uncanny. I can only attribute it to divine intervention. What had happened was in April of 2016, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant with our third child. Wasn't planned or anything, and I've always been the type of person where I'm very in tune with what's happening in my body. So I knew something was wrong. So I went to the doctor. We eventually did ultrasound, and it turned out that the fetus had stopped developing. And eventually, I had to get a suction evacuation. And as I was waiting for my period to return, my body just did not feel normal. And I remember in June, the first week in June 2016, we were actually heading away on a little family vacation. It was a long weekend here. And as I was getting the kids ready, combing my daughter's hair and everything, I was about to hop into the shower. And I just went like this. And I felt a lump in my breast. So I'm very in tune with my body, as I explained to you before. So it was as if it had happened overnight. I immediately called my doctor because I told my husband I'm not going on vacation. We need to go see the doctor first because I won't be able to relax. Called the doctor and they were able to fit me in. When I went to the doctor, the doctor was, after examining me, he was quite dismissive and was saying, Anna, you just had a miscarriage, your hormones are, raging, your body is trying to get back to normal. This just feels like a cyst. Let's wait until your first period comes back. And then, if the lump has not reduced, we will go further. So period came, period went, lump didn't change in size. And I kid you not, this is my index finger. I have a little mole, as you can see right there.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I measured the lump. The lump was that long.
Oh, wow.
All right. As I said, it's like it happened overnight. So anyways, they referred me to a clinic here to get a mammogram done, did the mammogram. And immediately after, they said, no, you need to do an ultrasound as well. Followed up with the ultrasound. And that was when all the red flags went off. I was in there for about 2 hours. And the radiologist wasn't saying anything. She's just not taking pictures. And I asked her a question and, she said to me, well, it's okay. When I'm through, we'll have a discussion. And then she went in my armpits and she was there for quite a while. And that's when I just broke down because I've done the math, I have a tumor. You're snapping away in my armpits. You've obviously seen some issues with my lymph nodes. Anyway, when she was through, she came back to me. She left the room. She excused herself and left the room, came back and asked and gave me a card saying that they had an opening that very evening to see the breast surgeon. So when I went in, the breast surgeon was just very blunt. And she pulled up the image on the screen and she told me point blank it was cancer. And of course, I'm freaking out. I was laughing. I was crying. I didn't know what to do. And I said, because my experience with doctors in the Caribbean is even if they suspect something, they kind of ease you into it.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I said that to her. I said, aren't there other things that mimic breast cancer? Are you just going to tell me point blank it's cancer? And she said, listen, I have to and give you false hope.
Mm-hmm.
That image, that's cancer. So prepare yourself for it. And, it was, as you can imagine, I was 38 years old, 2 months shy of turning 39. 2 young kids. My daughter at the time would have been, what are we in? We're in 2020. She's 12 now. So she would have been a little over 8 years old. My son would have been 4. So you can imagine all the thoughts that's going through my head. And the unfortunate thing as well is I had a very close friend at the time who I had studied. I did my master's with her in Canada, and she was actually dying from breast cancer. So it was just, to have immortality slapped in your face, it was just really a tremendously hard time to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And So that was in July that I got the final diagnosis, and then it still took me a few weeks to decide what I was gonna do. The recommendation of the doctor was to do chemo first, then do surgery. Chemo first to reduce the size of the lump, because what she had indicated to me is that studies had shown you didn't have to do a mammogram, not a mammogram, sorry, a mastectomy. That by treating it first and reducing the lump, it then meant less invasive surgery. And of course, as we women can understand, our breasts is part of our feminine, being a female. And to lose it, from my understanding with other breast cancer survivors, it takes an additional toll on you emotionally. So anyway, so that was a doctor's recommendation. And of course, I was a bit taken aback because my thought was I must sit around 6 months with this cancer in my body doing chemo and then wait until after to do surgery. But anyways, we did it. And after my second treatment, the tumor had reduced to a quarter of its size. But I'll backtrack a bit because it was a dilemma for me, because I've always been the type of person where I'm into, natural remedies. And, you always hear chemo is poison and you don't need it in your system and all of that. So it was a huge decision for me to make, because if I had not had children, I probably would have taken a different decision. I don't know. But what the defining moment for me was after much prayer and, really looking at the whole situation. I said, you know what, I'm going to do both. I'm going to do the traditional way. I'm going to do the natural way as well to complement that. And so I started chemo at the end of July. And it was a traumatic experience, to say the least. But having said that, I remember about 3 months in, one of the nurses came up to me and she wanted to know what I was doing, because she was surprised at how healthy I was. She was surprised at how, strong I was. And right, so yeah, one of the hardest thing to deal with at the time was I had a friend that was actually dying from breast cancer in Canada. And so it kept playing in my mind, is this what's going to happen to me as well? Is this going to be the end of me? But anyways, I tried to be positive about it and not focus on what could happen, but try and deal with the here and now. And, my faith played a big part in that. I tried to, rely on God through it as much as I could, and just try and have a positive outlook, because I know our bodies react to our thoughts. And I figured if I'm going to be all negative about it and all depressed, it's counterproductive in terms of my body trying to recover. So I just said, listen, I'm just going to grab the bull by the horns and take it day by day. So started the chemo and moved through. I had to stop the chemo a little early, about 5.5 months as opposed to 6, because the nerves in my body started to react in a bad way. But I worked through the whole process. My doctor didn't even know this until the last month of my treatment. I was working full time. I probably took maybe 2 weeks total in terms of sick leave. But what I did to help my body to recover from each chemo session was, one, I went vegan cold turkey. And I was doing a lot of natural remedies to help my body purge itself of the chemo as I went along, taking a lot of supplements as well. And then towards the end, I was finally able to get an appointment with this natural herbalist who I've been trying to get to for about 3 months. But he was completely booked up. And he was able to help me through the process of recovering from doing that as well. So in January of 2017 is when I did my surgery. I did a lumpectomy and wide excision and a reduction on the other breast. And then once I healed up, I moved into radiation. Now, during that time, I mean, my husband was a total strength for me. I know exactly why the Lord blessed me with him, not just for that, but in general, he's quite supportive. I have quite a few persons who I've spoke with, breast cancer survivors. A lot of them, their marriages didn't even survive, the diagnosis. One of them because while I was going through the process, I was referred to 3 breast cancer survivors in Jamaica. They were a lot older than me though, like 20 years survivor, 15 years survivor. But it was helpful, I found that a lot more helpful than speaking to my doctor because, the doctors, yes, they are trained, they know what to expect and so on, but nothing beats speaking to someone who has actually walked that walk. And I remember when I was going through the chemo and my tongue started to change color, I'm freaking out. And I called the doctor. And in fact, he knew it was a side effect, but it was a very rare side effect. I started having purple blotches all over my tongue. And he said, man, in all these years, he's never had a patient that had it, so all the rare side effects, I had them. And I remember when I would speak to the other survivors and they would share their experiences as well. It was comforting. And I wasn't as alarmed by how my body was reacting to the whole thing. And then my kids, that was another hard thing to deal with because they knew my friend that was dying as well. So I didn't want to alarm them too early. So we waited before they were told. We waited until the day before I started chemo to tell them specifically what was happening. But they knew something was wrong because mommy's always at the doctor, I remember several times, and I tried not to go with them. I tried to go outside of that because I did not want them to know too quickly. But I knew once I started chemo, I had no clue. I would have no clue of how my body would react. And I didn't want to scare them with that. I don't want to come home and I'm hurling in a bucket and whatever. So the day before, I asked my doctor, I had my last appointment with him before starting. And I said, listen, can the kids come? And he said, sure. So we told them that morning. And my son didn't really understand. Of course, he was 4 years old, so he was quite young. But then my daughter, she took it really hard. I remember wailing the whole way to the doctor's office. And I kept reassuring her and I said, listen, darling, in life, we're thrown curveballs sometimes. And, to me, it was a teachable moment because we tend to want to protect our kids. But the fact of the matter is, it's reality, and to me, you need to just share the information with them at their level. Don't need to give them too much. Like I'd explain in more detail with my daughter than I would my son. But to me, it's important for them to be along this journey as well. So anyways, I told them before the doctor's visit, took them to the doctor's visit, and as she was in the car crying, I said, listen, I need for you to, be brave right now for mommy. I know it's hard for you to face this and you're thinking, mommy may die and all of that jazz, but now is the time for you to gather your thoughts, ask the doctors whatever questions you had. And he was so supportive of them. He and her were doing most of the talking in that. And I found that by involving them in that way, instead of shielding them and saying, oh yes, my mommy's gonna be fine, mommy's gonna recover, it made them handle it a lot better. I didn't mince words with them. She would ask me blatantly, mommy, are you gonna die? And I'm like, I don't know. None of us know when we're gonna die. But the key is how you live in this moment. Right. And the key is putting all your trust in God. And if it is my time, then we're going to enjoy ourselves right till the end. If it is not my time, we're still thankful and we still, ensure that we operate and show that gratitude. So as I said, so chemo, then surgery, then I went through radiation. And I remember during the surgery wasn't too bad. Obviously, there's discomfort after and so on. I think I was off work for a week before I went back to full-time work and needed to, show some care in terms of not lifting too heavy stuff and so on. And then when I did chemo, oh my goodness, you don't feel anything. But towards the end, my skin started to react and it was like a burn. And, I remember saying to myself, you're going through all these different phases of it. They had to stop the irradiation early as well. But thankfully, my body recovered. And they don't prepare you mentally for
Right.
going through this journey. I don't think anybody can prepare you mentally. Everybody's experience is different. But I just felt like, each time I'm going through, I have to fight another hurdle. I have to fight another hurdle. And even still now I'm fighting hurdles because like every year I have to do my checkup and it's like deja vu, I keep replaying back to July 2016. And whilst you want to be hopeful and you want to be positive, the fear is always there, is it gonna come back? And thankfully, thus far, I've had a clean slate, no issues. I've had I think 2 MRIs. I get my mammograms annually. I see the doctor. Initially, I seen the doctor every 3 months, alternating between my oncologist and the breast surgeon. Now it's every 6 months because I've been getting the all clear, so they are satisfied that I don't see them that frequently. But yes, no, it's a mental struggle. It's a mental struggle, not so much physical, mental and emotional, in terms of, how do you move on? How do you not let this negatively impact your life? I've found one of the things that I've struggled with since the diagnosis is that I tend to be more anxious about stuff. I tend to be things that I could handle normally. I get flustered, and it's a work in progress. It's my trying to, submit myself to God daily and allowing him to work in me to bring about all the necessary healing that I need to get over this. But it's also a mindset and recognizing, what triggers me, to feeling like that. But I mean, as I said, the Lord really took me through this experience. If it's the hardest thing I've ever had to go through in my life, and I'm just happy I've come out on the positive side. I've lost a few friends along the way, and it's not easy. It's not easy, especially as a young woman. My friend in Canada, who I told you about, we were actually pregnant with our second child at the same time, and we had our children a day apart. She had her daughter on the 25th of February. I had my son on the 26th of February. And I remember 3 months later when she was sharing the news with me, she just went for a regular postnatal checkup. And boom, she was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. She didn't even have a lump in her breast. And, it was really hard. It was really hard. She died actually a month after I finished radiation. They had given her, I think it was around 6 months to live. She lived 5 years. And the last 2 years of that, the quality of life that she had wasn't as good, but she kept wanting to be around for her kids, and when the doctor would say, listen, there's nothing else we can do, she said, listen, whatever experimental treatment you have, I want to do it because I want to be here for my kids. So she died at the age of 40. I think she was 41. Yeah, because she was about a year older than me. Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I found was surprising. They said where younger women in their 30s who were pregnant or going through postpartum um, tended to have a diagnosis of cancer, and that was the most prevalent cancer from which they would die from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know there was that correlation between pregnancy
Mm-hmm.
and breast cancer.
Yeah, I didn't know it myself. I didn't know it myself, yeah. As I mean, I'm of a firm belief that pregnancy is what saved me. I have no doubt that the cancer would have been there prior to the pregnancy, but I just don't think it was palpable. And I think, the hormones raging because the type of cancer that I had was estrogen and progesterone positive receptors, which means that those hormones feed the cancer. So that pregnancy was just the perfect environment, for it to just balloon, to a large size tumor. And Yeah, but I think what is not said enough, because it was not on my radar, as I would have explained when we had our discussion, Marsha. Here in New Zealand, the age that you're recommended to start the mammograms is 40. In the Caribbean, I believe they may have changed it in Barbados. I'm not too sure, but when I was living in Barbados, it was age 45. So this is not on my radar, you know. You know you're supposed to do your exams each month. And truth be told, I never really did them. But having said that, um, when I said I didn't do it, I didn't do it properly, meaning, however they've told me to do it. But I still knew my body. And I think it's very critical for us, both men and women, that we know our body. We know what's our normal, so that the slightest change, you're able to detect that. Because if you're the type of person you're just going along and you have these aches and pains and you're not really paying them any mind, you're not going to the doctor and whatever, when something serious happens, it might be too late,
Yeah.
you know. But I remember when I had the diagnosis and I shared it with one of my sisters, one of my half sisters. She was just totally terrified. She's younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And her doctor had recommended that, you're going to do the usual thing as women, the pap smear and mammogram and so on. And she was terrified about doing it and kept delaying doing it. And I kept saying to her, listen, you have kids. You can't, you need to face that fear, because what would you prefer? Would you prefer waiting and waiting and waiting, and by the time you go to say, listen, we can't do anything for you? Or would you prefer then finding out early so that you have a better chance of surviving it? You can't let your fear cripple you to that extent. Um, and, I remember I was sharing with you one of the cancer survivors who I'd spoken with. Her family had the gene, the BRCA gene. And the type of cancer she has is triple negative, which is one of the most aggressive ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after her diagnosis that she realized that her father had breast cancer. He found some tumors and never did anything about it, because the stigma with men, breast cancer is a female thing. So if you find a lump, what am I going to the doctor for? By the time he decided to do something about it, he had stage 4 breast cancer. And before her saying this to me, I mean, I've always heard the doctor say, men can get it too, but I'd never heard of someone who actually had it.
Right.
So it was just a wake up call. And I think it's something. It's not just for women to be aware of, but men need to be aware of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of men who don't speak about it,
Yeah.
and there are lots of men who get breast cancer.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, these are just information that we don't know about, and also we don't talk about. You know,
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And I
somebody.
and I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why. Because I, well, I've always been the type of person, I don't mind sharing stuff, especially if it is beneficial to other people. And I know while I was doing my treatment, it was really, really an emotionally hard time. Now that I look back, I said, boy, I really should have shared that journey as it took place, but I wasn't ready emotionally.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time I posted anything was after my surgery, because I literally had to wait 6 months to know whether or not the cancer had spread,
Mm-hmm.
because they can do all the biopsies in the world until they actually go in and see the extent of, whether or not the cancer has spread to your lymph nodes, or, or to the rest of your body. In fact, you don't know, so it was 6 months for me to wait on a diagnosis. Thankfully, in my instance, nothing, it was just the tumor. It hadn't spread beyond the tumor.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when I started sharing, and I realized that even the other cancer survivors who I've seen, everybody's very hush hush about it, and it's something that we need to share. It's something that needs to be shared, because as we can appreciate, and it's not just with breast cancer, um, people are getting breast cancer at younger and younger and younger ages. Even babies are being diagnosed, not breast cancer, cancer in general. And as such, we can't afford to be complacent. We need to ensure that we play our part and do what we can to get an early diagnosis.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I'm realizing. The information that is out there would not have caught you, in the sense that I'm saying. 45, um, you know, do your annual screen, so you're in your 30s, you would not have
Right?
had it on your radar.
Exactly.
And they're saying that screening doesn't even prevent cancer. What it does is
Mm,
just it's just a matter of early detection. and
exactly.
and so even though it's this is the other thing that I found out, and this is what I'm realizing, that within the African American community, we actually are more prone at a younger age than even this 45. So why do we have this 45 in our minds when it should be different
Earlier.
ages or earlier
Yeah. Yeah.
for certain communities, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
that was mind-boggling for me.
And that's the other thing as well, because until I got that cancer diagnosis, I knew that some people genetically were predisposed to getting it. We all know about Angelina Jolie, who opted to remove both of her breasts. I think she removed her ovaries as well because I think she had both. There's BRCA1 and there's BRCA2, and they each of them, the risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer, it differs for both. And I didn't know about this until I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And here in New Zealand, once you get that diagnosis, they test you for these genes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I know of people in the Caribbean that didn't happen with them. And of course, the reason for them doing that is because whether or not it's spread, if you have that gene, they know then their approach to your treatment will be different. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you do have the gene, whether or not it's spread is irrelevant. The fact is you're at a much higher risk of it developing again.
Yeah.
And so I did the test. Thankfully, I didn't have either of the genes. But yeah, we don't know about these things until you actually are faced with it. And I think it's something that's important for everyone to know, because if you know your family had a history of, say, ovarian cancer, a lot of people don't know that the gene associated with the breast cancer, that it's sometimes related to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And to know is to be forewarned. In first world countries, I believe once there's a family history, they do test you.
Mm-hmm.
But in the third world country, that's not happening.
Right.
You know, that's not happening. And of course, I'm sure part of the reason why it's predominant in the African American community, it's kind of similar to what's happening now with COVID, in that the people of color tend to be not always as affluent. And of course, for instance, in like America, you don't have money in dog and stuff like to get sick. You understand? Because
Yeah.
you better have health insurance,
Yeah.
and that's part of the reason as well why the mortality rate is so high. One, you don't you're the access to healthcare is not as readily available because you may not necessarily have the money to do so. And then two, it's the knock-on effect in that minorities, we tend not to be as healthy in terms of our lifestyle. And cancer, whilst it can be a um, you know, genetically related, it's lifestyle related predominantly. So whether it's what you eat or the environment that you're in, or too stressed, or you're not getting enough rest, a whole host of things. They don't know specifically, but it tends to be a lifestyle disease. Um, so yeah.
So Jolene, I know you've shared your journey. You've shared,
Mhm.
um, what's your what you have gone through in the sense of, ac- um, in the sense of your family life, in the sense of your your personal life, but what about your professional life? I know you kind of hinted a little bit about you were still working while you were going to chemo.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in
My employer here, they're a godsend. Um, as I had explained earlier, I work with the government here and work at Christchurch City Council. And in general, they're very supportive, but it really shocked me how supportive they were through my whole process.
Mhm.
I remember when I got the diagnosis, I shared it with my boss or my manager, I should say, and a few of the senior persons within my team, because I didn't want people to be sorry for me.
Mhm.
So I didn't share with my whole team until after, well, just prior to doing my surgery, and nobody knew that I was sick. But once I told my boss about the diagnosis, they met with me. The first thing they did was they reduced my workload because they said, listen, you can't be stressed, right? So we're taking these off of you, and we want you to just pace yourself, and if you're not well, just tell us. There are days I would go to work and I just work for 5 hours,
Mhm.
or I do the full 8 hours, so they're pretty flexible with that, and extremely supportive, extremely supportive. I am not too sure how well it how if it would have gone as well if had I still been in the architectural profession. Certainly not in the Caribbean, because my job security was never in question. I wasn't concerned about that, and I remember them saying I wasn't concerned about running out of sick leave. I just wasn't concerned because they made you know that they got your back. You know. So it was quite an experience, and it work was fine. Work was fine. Work
Yeah.
was fine.
So
Very supportive. Yeah.
speaking of work, I know you're in your custom designed house. I'm just going to lighten the mood, as we close out. If you want to
Yeah.
share a little bit about what was the process of designing and building your custom home in New Zealand. I know, um, just share us a little bit about that, about what that was for you as an architect. And
Right. Right. No, it was a lovely experience. From start to finish, we had a bit of fight back from the contractors that we used in terms of some of the details that we provided and so on. Um, they wanted to do things as simple as possible, and like for instance, in our living space here, I don't know if you can see here, we have raked ceilings. So it was a big fight with our contractor. He wanted us to just go with flat ceilings because the raked ceilings meant that, well, as you can appreciate here, unlike in the Caribbean where our homes tend to be concrete, these are timber framed walls, so a lot of jib linings and so on. So the level of finish that they need to do to ensure that you're not seeing the imperfections when you have the slope ceilings versus the flat, it's that much greater. So they didn't want to be coming in and fixing defects and all of that jazz. But anyways, we fought through that process, and they eventually realized why we wanted what we wanted. So much so that at the end of the process, I remember one of the guys one of the home consultants, he whispered to us when we were through this, when ready to sell, make sure you call me, you know. But it was a lovely process, and very professional here. We have, working in the Caribbean, we've dealt with a lot of contractors, and we know how stressful that can be sometimes in terms of the quality of work that's being delivered, and the variations and all of that jazz. But these guys made the process super simple, and maybe it's because we're architects, because like right now we have friends who are building and they're pulling their hair out. But we were involved in the entire process, and the contractors were super efficient. I mean, every week we got our weekly report. If there were delays, we knew about it and so on. I would say it's the building this house has been one of the easiest, how would I put it? in terms of, the client contractor relationship, it was just a very smooth process. I have no complaints whatsoever. Of course, being from the Caribbean, the way we articulate our spaces and, or sense of an aesthetic, it's slightly different. There's some similarities. I remember when we were designing the house, they were just shocked at how much we fit in within the square meter that we had, because we find here that sometimes the space, there tends to be a lot of wasted space, and in the Caribbean you don't have a lot of money to spend, so you gotta use the money wisely and ensure that the spaces are working. So no, it's been a pleasure, a pleasant experience. We love our home. We've lived in 3 properties since we've been here. New Zealand, it's a temperate climate. So, they have all 4 seasons. But what we found here, unlike other colder climates that we either visited or lived in, is that the houses don't tend to be as warm. They don't typically do central heating. And that was a big thing for us. And the typical house here, all they have is a heat pump in their living space. And the rest of the spaces, that's it, right? So you'd find that you come out of bed and you have to be wrapping up warm to just go to the bathroom, because you're moving through the house and there are different temperatures based on that. And we didn't want that. So we ensured that we had adopted heat pump systems so that it's warm everywhere. Typically, or the garages here aren't insulated. We made sure we got ours insulated as well. So it's been a lovely experience. I can't complain. And we love our home. There is probably 1 or 2 tiny things that we change about it, but it's lovely. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
does anyone in the meeting, does anybody have a quick question to ask Jolene before we close out? I'm just going to open the floor for a few minutes. You can just unmute your mic.
Well, I don't have a question. Hi, I'm Leanne. So I am Jolene's sister-in-law. I met Jolene when I was, a child. I think when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, quite, yes, like her baby. And she's always been a source of power and strength. And, her voice as a survivor for me is very inspiring. And although as a member of her family, I feel like I was on the journey with her. But actually, I'm realizing just even from today that she was actually on the journey on her own, and she was protecting us as family. And that's just Jolene. And just to say that, we're incredibly proud of her. And she's looking fabulous. I have to just say that because it's true. You're looking fabulous.
Thank you.
You deserve everything good in life. You are an amazing woman. You're strong. You're loving. You walk with God. And, we just want to hear more of your voice. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say. No question.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks so much. Anyone? And that will be the last one before we close out. Anyone else? Any questions?
Mine also isn't a question, but I'm Isan. This is my Auntie Jo. I'm part of my cousin, second cousin. So Uncle Perry is my second cousin. And I wasn't very privy to Auntie Jo's journey. I was 4 or 5 years younger, so I was 16. And I remember hearing from mommy and daddy and being like, Auntie Jo has cancer. We need to pray for them. But I think sitting here and listening to you talk about your journey and hearing it from you has been moving for me to hear what you went through and how strong you've been. So I'm glad I was able to hear Auntie Jo. So, yeah.
Oh, thanks, Sissy.
Well, Jolene, thank you so much for coming on, sharing the story. We're going to put this together and package it so that everyone can hear, how brave and how resilient you are. Of course, we're talking about Caribbean resiliency and just, one of the things that I labeled the series as is when all isn't well, how do you handle it when you're in our type of a profession, which is very, I'm sorry, rigorous and demanding,
Yeah.
and you're now having to deal with, a life issue. How do you handle it? And you have demonstrated, this attitude of, resilience, focus, of course, reliance on God, and, and also just wanting to help others, because your story is a story that a lot of people wouldn't have even considered, especially with regards to you being in your 30s, you being a black woman, you being from the Caribbean, you're in a different country. All of
Mm-hmm.
those are factors where people would have crumbled under, and we're just so thankful for you demonstrating that resilience and that fighting spirit. One of the things that I
Right.
wanted for us to all end on, which is what Jolene kept on saying, and I'm going to let you have the last word, is that you can survive. You can survive. And if there's anything that will speak against any fear or anything that would cause you to maybe, crumble when you're faced with a life changing situation, is that you can survive. And of course, knowledge is power. you
Yeah.
know Understanding what you're dealing with, finding out. I love what you said, Jolene, where some of us as from the Caribbean would say we don't want no doctor touch our bodies, just go straight natural. Well, you did both, covered your bases, and that is actually, for me, a wiser move than ruling out any option that would increase your chance of survival.
Exactly.
you know
Exactly.
I know for us as mothers, you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about your
Mm-hmm.
children, you're thinking about all these things. And when you said that, as much as with that attitude of whatever it takes, whatever it is, whatever we can do, we will do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you with that last thought, with a last thought for of encouragement. I know you were very adamant that this whole idea of support is important, and what does that look like. So I'm going to leave you with that last word, and then we're going
Mm-hmm.
to close out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, support is critical. With anything in life, but especially when you're going through challenges. And I think we need to be mindful of that and not be scared to reach out, not be scared for people to see your vulnerability. I think sometimes we have this front up, that you need to be strong and be able to face everything, and we're human. God knows we're human, and sometimes you need to cry. You need to cry. I mean, we need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to be honest with others, because it's only then that we can rise above. If you're in denial about your situation, you're not going to be able to overcome it. And the other thing as well, which I would encourage, is the reliance on God. I couldn't have made it through this without him. Um, there are times when, I was just rock bottom, and I know he was just carrying me through. We need to know our limitations. We need to be accepting of our limitations, and we need to use whatever resources we can to get through our situation. And to me, this is true about life in general, not just illness. Um, so yeah.
Thank you, Jolene.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. This is Caribbean Resiliency. This is a Design Resilient series. Now, Caribbean Resiliency is a annual event. We're inviting architects, designers, urban planners. We're going to talk about Caribbean architecture and Caribbean design. And this series is just going to be a monthly series where we're going to be sharing about specific issues um, that that affects us, that can affect us, um, and just, very specific topics that we're addressing. So for the month of October, we're talking about breast cancer awareness. For those of you who want to come back and join the Zoom at 6 o'clock, I'm going to be sharing about domestic violence awareness and my journey with dealing with that in my first marriage, and trying to build a professional life, and how that kind of fought against each other. Um, Next month, I already have we have Michael Wisiri. I think hopefully I'm not pronouncing his name incorrectly. He's going to come and share about um, how to handle what's happening now as architects, as graduate students. He is a provider of services for, like, to study the ARE for those who want to be licensed here in the U.S. I also have another gentleman who is going to talk to the younger designers and architects about starting their career in architecture and sitting, SATs and creating portfolios, because we don't want us to be stagnant. We don't want us to stop what we're doing, and, be fearful as to what's going on in this world. We just, like Jolene was saying, you're going to face we're going to face the situation that we're dealing with. We're going to come up with the solutions, and we're not going to rule out any options. So that's what the Design Resilient series is about, and I hopefully you can join me at 6 o'clock later today, and also for next month I will be posting it in the Caribbean Resiliency group. So guys, we're going to close out. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for attending, Jolene. Thank you so much. Jolene also has a business that's not just in architecture. So I don't know if you have some time to share about that, Jolene, to the group.
Yeah, sure, sure. I have a home-based business. My husband and I have partnered up with a technology company in the States, which right now has 4 different verticals. There is travel/lifestyle, rideshare, and then there is a bill negotiation service, as well as a wellness product. They have launched a product which is the first of its kind to the market, so wearable aromatherapy technology. Um, yeah, so I mean, I'll just give a little punchline. I mean, especially in light of what's happening with COVID, what we have realized is that we need to be resilient, and we need to ensure that going forward, we can provide for our families. Some of us have been fortunate to have not lost our jobs. Not everyone can say that. And I think it's critical as young people for us to have a plan A, but we need to have a plan B and a plan C, and ensure that we are able to have other sources of income should plan A bottom out. Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much, Jolene. Thank you so much, everyone. And we reconvene using the
Yes.
same information, same link. I'll post it in the Caribbean Resiliency group if you guys want to join in at 6
Sure.
p.m. my time, Eastern Standard Time.
Right, right. Now, well, thanks for having me, Marsha. It's been a pleasure sharing my journey. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, take care. We're going to log out.